Breaking tonight, just 2 weeks after a deadly terror attack on American soil, a bombshell hearing on Capitol Hill raises serious questions about how the Department of Homeland Security is or is not keeping track of potential terrorists right here within our borders. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Earlier today, the House Oversight Committee held a very charged hearing on terrorist travel, confronting officials from the State Department and the Homeland Security Department about those in this country overstaying their visas and illegal immigration in general. What we found out is concerning at best. Since 2001, the United States has revoked some 9,500 visas over terrorist concerns. But when asked where those 9,500 people are, the feds did not have an answer. Lawmakers also pressed officials on why the social media accounts of those who want to enter this country are not routinely vetted, including the public social media of these people. Remember, the female terrorist in San Bernardino made her radical views known, but in fairness to the administration, she did post under a pseudonym and kept her account private. Still, it begs the question how many others could have been stopped by a simple look at their Facebook or Twitter or by Googling them. What's more, we also learned about a number of investigations into Syrians who have overstayed their visas here in the U.S. All of this did not sit well with lawmakers today. Watch.
You have no idea how many of those people are in the United States. Of the revoked visas, do you give those to the Department of Homeland Security?
Exactly. We revoke the visa, and the information is...
So Homeland Security, how many revoked visas are still in the United States of America?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have that.
You don't have a clue, do you?
You can see why we're scared to death that this administration, the Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, is not protecting the American people.
And there was much more. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge reports tonight from Washington. Catherine?
Megyn, tonight the State Department said it was up to Homeland Security to track down and deport foreign nationals whose visas are pulled, and there was no response from Homeland Security to Fox's questions. Earlier today, the administration's claim that the vetting is solid, especially for refugees, was seriously challenged.
Well, if all of that was true, how did we miss the lady in San Bernardino? As the FBI director said, Mr. Gowdy, and I think is the fact that there was nothing in the system that we used that would pick that up.
One of the big takeaways from today's hearing is that it is easier to enter the U.S. on a fiancé visa, as shooter Tashfeen Malik did, than to enter as a refugee. Witnesses said today there's no mandatory social media screening for fiancé visas, but it is used for other applicants.
Social media is clearly something that we need to be talking about. It is something that we have been building and are going to continue to build. We've been focusing primarily on the refugee setting. We're going to be looking at also using it in non-refugee settings as well.
While it's not public whether the San Bernardino shooters used encryption, a law enforcement source says at least one operative in last month's Paris terrorist attacks did, with witnesses today saying it's still a gray area.
How far can we go with regard to social media? How far can we go into people's Facebooks and private chats? Are all issues that are legitimate and need to be discussed.
We also learned today that last year nearly 120 Syrian nationals overstayed. 11 were arrested, most cases closed, but 18 are the subject of ongoing federal investigations, but no clarity tonight on whether Homeland Security or the FBI is driving these cases. This congressional testimony today really seemed to reinforce a disconcerting intelligence picture, that the vetting system has not kept pace with technology, which is now enabling terrorist groups, as they did on 9/11, to use our systems and freedoms against us, Megyn.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is not all. In a heated exchange today, Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz also accused the Department of Homeland Security of allowing violent criminals to remain in the United States. Trace Gallagher has that part of the story from our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
Megyn, at today's congressional hearing, the Department of Homeland Security acknowledged there are tens of thousands of people in this country illegally who have been convicted of crimes and could have been deported but were not. Most of the crimes they committed were minor. Many were also felonies. The way it works is DHS focuses on 3 priority groups. Priority group 1 includes illegals engaged in or suspected of terrorism or those convicted of felonies. Priority group 2 includes those convicted of things like sexual abuse, use of a firearm, drug distribution, or trafficking. And group 3 are those who have been issued deportation notices. But regardless of what priority level illegal immigrants fall into, DHS allows immigration agents to use prosecutorial discretion to either arrest them or let them go. That discretion is a point of contention with the chair of the House Oversight Reform Committee. Listen.
And then Jay Johnson, the Secretary of Homeland Security, puts out guidance and say, even if you commit sex crimes, even if you do certain other crimes, don't necessarily need to deport them. They're here illegally, they commit a crime, and Homeland Security is saying, use discretion.
DHS strongly disputes Congressman Chaffetz's characterization that illegal immigrants who commit rape are being allowed to roam free. But according to the DHS Inspector General, it's difficult to know exactly who's roaming free because the feds have not kept track of the number of times they have used prosecutorial discretion. In other words, DHS can provide data on the number of people detained or deported, but there is no data on how many were released. Megan.
Trace, thank you. As you've been seeing, Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz was incensed over the idea that criminals, including those guilty of sexual assault, apparently are not a top deportation priority for this administration. Here's just a little more of the tense showdown between Congressman Chaffetz and officials from Homeland Security.
Do you think that's terrorism if a woman's raped? Do you, Mr. Burson?
Do I think that that is terrorism?
Yeah.
No, but it's an egregious, horrible crime, which is the father of three daughters, I think is a horrible crime.
It is for that woman. It is for that family. And you don't deport them. How do you do that? You give them an excuse to make a decision.
If I may, if a woman is raped and the perpetrator is convicted of rape, that is a felony, that is a serious crime, that is a top priority for removal. So
no, it's not. It is not the top priority.
Mark Thiessen is a Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Mark, so what we're learning is we have identified people who have overstayed their visas. We think they might be terrorists or tied to terrorists. We have no idea where they are. And we have identified a bunch of criminals in the country who have committed major crimes, including sexual assault, and they're allowed to stay too, and we may or may not know where they are.
It's amazing. Our system is just so badly broken. The Obama administration wants to let in 10,000 Syrian refugees, but they have lost track of 10,000, almost 10,000 suspected terrorists that they granted visas to enter the United States with. I mean, think about what that means. First, 9,500 people penetrated our defenses, beat our screening system, and actually got visas to legally enter the United States who had ties to terrorism.
Post 9/11.
Post 9/11. I mean, this is since 2001. Second of all, the officials, when they caught their mistake, when they didn't revoke their visas, they lost track of them. We don't know where they are. We don't know if they're in the United States. And then third, those 9,500 are the ones we know about. How many people are there out there who we don't know about, who they didn't catch their mistake and revoke the visas? I can name one, Tafshin Malik. She never had her visa revoked. We didn't figure out that she was a terrorist until she killed 14 people. So this system is fundamentally broken, and it's no wonder the American people don't trust them.
And you know what? In some of these cases, it appears a simple Google search might provide them with the information they're looking for. I mean, maybe they should make the list of 9,500 public, and we could just put some citizen sleuths on it, and I bet you we'd find most of them.
They do a better job than the State Department. I mean, here's a stunning statistic that puts that 9,500 into perspective. Justin Lang is a researcher at the American Enterprise Institute. He went and looked at the State Department visa figures, and according to the State Department's own visa office, since 2001, they have denied visas to a net 2,231 people for ties to terrorist activities or terrorist organizations. 2,231. We have allowed in 9,500 people who now we later figured out were tied to terror. That means Our system is so broken, we're letting in 4 times as many people as we block to keep out. I mean, that's just, it's so fundamentally broken that, I mean, if an NHL goalie let in 4 times more goals than he stopped, he'd be fired. But the State Department consular people never get fired.
And what they're saying is, well, we prioritize deporting those illegal immigrants who are engaged in terrorism. Well, you may prioritize it, but I got almost 10,000 loose right now who you didn't prioritize. But they say the second tier of priorities are those who commit crimes like sexual assault, burglary, DUI. That's in the second tier. But if you can't even get the terrorists in the first tier, what does that say about all the people who committed second-tier crimes? That's what Chaffetz was going for in his second diatribe we saw there.
Absolutely, and that's the amazing thing. I mean, in the last 2 years, the Obama administration has released 66,000 criminal aliens into our communities, people who have been convicted of crimes like rape, murder, kidnapping.
They're not
Those are not
supposed to
people
release
we lost track
felons,
of.
convicted felons. That's why he was taking issue with the word rape. Convicted
But those
rapists
are not people-
are supposed to go.
They're not people we lost track of. They're people they had in their custody, and they released them. I mean, this is just so fundamentally messed up. It's amazing how anyone trusts this screening system.
And many do not. Mark, good to see you.